in 1999 because there was a massive shortage of nurses. And because of the massive shortage of nurses, there was a mass recruitment to get trained nurses to come from abroad to come and help out. So that's how I came. I came in and lived between Dudley, going through the initial conversion program, and then moved to the Northwest to stay within the Northwest. I had 2 children in Nigeria. I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. I have 2 children in Nigeria, and I went ahead to have 2 more children here. So we're a family of 2 boys and 2 girls. And I must say that I just want to make it very clear, I do not represent any organization. I don't represent Black Lives Matter, any movement. I am just coming here as a mom, as a parent, okay? And somehow you might hear me talk from the heart. I'll try not to talk too deep because I still want to remain afloat while I pass the information. I also want to say that what I'm going to talk about does not define me absolutely. It doesn't define my children absolutely, because according to my daughter, when I spoke to her this afternoon, we've come a long way, okay? It didn't put a stamp on her face to say, this is how you must turn out. They have turned out reasonably well, but not without a cost. There's been a lot of cost to it. But it's a cost that we've managed, our faith being a very strong backbone. We're Christians, and we're Christians that believe in the totality of a Christian faith. We attend church on Sunday. The children go to Sunday school, and we do a lot of praying. I came into the country because they needed nurses. I was already working as a nursing sister in a hospital. I worked between orthopedics, and by the time I came in, I was working in a cardiothoracic unit. So where people that have had lung surgeries stay. And my experience, I want to bring the effect. And then I also want to look at the way forward. In my role, I do a lot of work trying to support people around their mental health. I do a lot of work trying to support people to raise their children, understanding that the first few years of a child's life is so critical for what they end up becoming in life. It's something that is clearly documented in a lot of documents. And if you look at a document called the 1001 Critical Days document, it tells you how critical it is to be there for your children, to do your best. Your best doesn't have to be 100%, 50% is good, but you have to do your best. But then within that are parents who are inundated with their own problems. And these problems cut across so many levels. I would describe my experience as it's got to be very resilient. You've got to be very sharp. You've got to be, it's as if you've got bullets coming from different angles. You've got to navigate the terrain. And as you're walking through the bullets, you've got children and you can't let anyone drop. The question I say is, who will you lose? When I look around and I said, I've got 4, who am I prepared to let go? The torrent is coming. It's coming from different angles. I've got my own issues at work and things that I've had to experience. By the way, where I work now is great. I get on with the people I work with. They're absolutely very supportive. I will not look at any of my managers and think, oh, they're not supporting me. Not at all. But I'm looking at my journey up to this point. Coming in, I will just talk briefly about my pregnancies, the ones I had here. The first pregnancy, I was working in a hospital. And before then, I came first as a nurse. So my husband and my children came. And when they arrived, it was on the day I worked. And then I overslept. I was supposed to get to the airport to get them. But I needed to get the bus. So when I overslept, I had to get the bus. But by the time I got to the airport, my husband The only phone number he had was the phone number of the ward where I work. So he rang them and he said he was at the airport, that he's my husband and he's come with the 2 children. That was where my nightmare started. My colleagues, of course, didn't know that my children were coming. So when I got to work that night, it was a torrent. Oh, you brought your children and your husband here. How long are they staying? When are they going? By the way, the 2 children, I left my daughter when she was 1. I did her birthday on Sunday and flew on Wednesday to come to United Kingdom. I do remember many nights. And then my older son, my son was 4. He was going to be 4. And my daughter was just 1 year. I remember many nights when I was doing my initial settling down, weeping and thinking, why on earth did I leave these children? But anyway, within 1 year, they were on the way to come and they arrived. And then somebody at work, I didn't even have one person to say to me, oh, well done, your children are here and at least they can see their mom. It was, why are they here? Why did you bring them? So you brought more people around. I still have to go back and work with these people. And then the torrent continued. It was like, when are you going to go back? And at this time, can I say that most nights I will come a night shift. I was a night staff. And I will be the only qualified nurse who is a permanent staff there. I will have to work with agency staff. And I still have to go back home and deal with my domestic duties. Then fast forward, I decided to move from there because I became pregnant for the 3rd child. And the question was, so you want to have your child here so that your child will be a British citizen? Are you going to go back to have your child there? Remember that I was the only qualified trained nurse in most night shifts employed in that ward. I often had to work with agency staff. So if I went back, that would be, they didn't think about the fact that I came to help out. They didn't think about the fact that I'm a mom, I have children. Fast forward, I decided it was getting too much. I decided to move. But every night I would go and I would come back to work. It's like you're walking through a battlefield. You've got to work. And in the first few years of working in this country, you're not allowed any public funds. So you've got to work, you've got to pay tax. So I have to work. If I don't work, who do I abandon my bills to? Who do I abandon my children to? I will come back and I will still have to parent them. Fast forward, I moved to the next place. And then my children were ready to go to school. When they went to school, initially we were in a very rundown area of Manchester, which was absolutely fantastic. My children would come back, they had friends, everything was great. They never came back and said there was anything that anybody said. It was a very small Church of England school, 1 class. And then as they grew older, we decided to move to a bigger accommodation because at this time I was pregnant for the 4th. And then they now moved into a school that is supposedly in a very, so to say, better environment because the houses are better, the postcode is better. And the nightmare started. My children would come back from school and say to me, Mommy, they're calling us poo. They're calling us chocolate. And I have to then sit down and talk it through and tell them, you see, these people, question I'll ask anybody here, what do you say to your child? What will you say to a child in reception, a 4-year-old in reception, or your daughter in primary 3 that comes back to say she's been called poo? And then you watch these children go to school every day because you've got to send them to school. And they come back knowing that they will be called all sorts of names. First thing I had to do was to start praying, Lord, I need wisdom. I need understanding here. I need to know what to say. I need to know how to guide them. I need to help them, not so that they understand that this does not define them. And in the midst of that, I was still juggling some of the issue in the new place where I was working. let's leave my own experience aside. I've got to face my children. And that is what a lot of parents have to go through. It doesn't matter what you're going through. You've got to remain a fighter for the sake of the children you're holding. Some win, some lose. The ones that lose are the ones often who are so challenged by what they're going through that they cave in. And they cave in once the parent caves in. You understand that most of the children will be caving in. You think about the 1,001 critical days in pregnancy. I had to go through pregnancy, fighting through to work. I didn't have to be there to play with the child, to smile. You know, the power of smile, the power of face. How could you be smiling when you know that you're going to go to work and you don't know what's going to happen? I'm talking from the experience of so many other moms who are like me. I have some moms that will come back. They've been accused of what they didn't do. These are my fellow nurses that came with me. I remember one of them that had to be dragged to the police station because I was told that they did something they didn't do. I remember one of them that came back and said the family have said that they don't want her to nurse their relative because they don't want a person that doesn't look like them. She still has to work. If she doesn't work, how will she feed her children? What will she do? So some cave in. They cave in and they're not in the place to be able to contain children. The way I describe it at work is this. When I teach and when I go through some of the training, if you're full and somebody else is trying to pass something to you, where do you keep it? You've got a jug that is full. As a parent, you're inundated and your child walks in and crying and say, Mommy, they're still calling me poo and they're still calling me chocolate. Where do you have the space to contain that child when your container is full? You've got to let out some to be able to have space. And who is there to contain you as a parent? Who is there to unpick things with you, to help you understand what is happening? Who is there that will say to you, I've got your back, it's going to be okay? Who will speak up for you at work? The things that I don't understand is, in the midst of all these are people who I go on break with, we go on break, we share our meals, we make a cup of tea for one another, and they see you go through things. And there are teachers, and there are other children, and they've not been in the position to say, no, hang on a minute. It's not right what you're doing. What you're doing is wrong. Because we're not talking about one person, we're talking about generational damage. For me, I had church. And the church is a very strong community and we have other children there. Can I say that most of the friendship my children ever made were within church setting? And in the midst of being called poo, I decided to do something. I said, okay, maybe if I start inviting the children in your class to our home, I will invite them. I will say, okay, let's just come and make cookies. I went and read some cookie books and found how to make brownies to invite them so that at least my children will have friends. I remember one of my friends that said something to me. She said she came back and her daughter came back from school and said to her, Mommy, there's a new girl that is coming to our class. They said there's a new girl joining. I pray that this girl will be a Black girl so that I will have a friend. This girl was in the year 3. The mom's heart was broken. What do you say to your child? She encouraged the child. She had to say, remember, you still have friends everywhere and you're not going to be everybody's friend. But is that the right thing to say? What have we passed on to our children? And what will they pass on to the next children, the next generation? I also want to say a little bit of moving from there to my son in secondary school. And actually, it got me. The day I had this story, it got me. From year 8, his grades started dropping. Year 7, he looked forward to going to secondary school. His grades started dropping in year 8. I didn't know what was happening. Year 9 was awful. I didn't know what was happening. I used to get a call from the school. They would say, oh, we're not having a good time. And I will speak to my manager. I'll say, please, I need to get to the school. And I will run to the school and I'll see my son. He's kicking his legs saying, it's not fair. It's not fair. They're not doing it to this person. And I'm saying to him, no, you've got to think about your future. You've got to think about your life. You've got to hold on. And then he waged through it and managed to get certain things done. And then when he left the secondary school, he was now in the university. He said to me, Mommy, I want to tell you some of the things that I experienced. I said, what was that? He said one of the days that he came into school, the teacher called him and said to him that a girl has accused someone of using a stick to terrorize her in the corridor. And when she described the girl, the boy who did this, the boy's description matched you. And they pulled him to a room, and then a deputy head teacher was there, the head of year, I think it was the head of year and this teacher, and there were 3 of them interrogating this boy. He was saying, no, he didn't do it. No, he didn't do it. No, he didn't do it. They now said to him they were going to call the police to come and get him. That could he say that what he did, that he did it? And they now said to him, now, look, if you agree that you did it, then we'll not call the police. He said to me, Mommy, I quickly tried to find a story. And I said, yes, I did. And they said, what happened? He said that he saw a stick. And they said, which stick? He now went and picked up a random stick. The next week, the week after, they called him. I said, oh, by the way, we're sorry for that day. The girl came back and now said the story again, and the description was somebody else. What will you do as a mom? What will you do as a dad? I wasn't there. I wasn't there to maybe hold forth for him, to stand by him, to tell him, no, you never agreed to what you didn't do. And they just said it that way. That's okay. That's fine. And I thought, why didn't you tell me? And then when I picked it, I saw that we were dealing with fear. He was frightened. He's going to go back there. And he knew me as a mom. You know, most parents, you can do anything to me. You can actually see me and slap my cheek and I will smile. But for most parents, the day you get my child is the day you get me at that level. I would have been going to the local authority. I would have been, you know, taking it on. But then how will you send your child back to this school if the head of year and the class teacher is being pulled? And in the midst of this were other teachers. They heard the story. They knew what happened. Who came back and said to those teachers, what you did was wrong? And then he told me another story. He said, and then one of the other teachers, and it was in the midst of his grades dropping, he used to, anyway, I'll talk about that briefly later on. He used to like come back so somber. He said, oh, that in class, they were making fun of him. His grades were dropping. And while his grade was dropping, of course, what did they do? They put him in foundation class. Your grades dropped. You're not meeting the standard. Your maths down. Foundation. And we had to fight, like lots of teaching at home. And he said in one of those days, he was in the class and the teachers, they started laughing at him and they said something like, oh, the teacher said, oh, maybe my son, he called his name, will end up jumping on the monkeys with trees in the jungle. And he did not tell me, did it? How did he turn around? It was a youth camp. He went for a youth conference. You know, this youth camp they do during summer, a church summer youth camp. He went there, he had an encounter, he surrendered his life to Christ, yielded, and then by the time he was coming back from that youth camp, he said to me, Mommy, I've had an encounter with God, my life's changed. He went back to school, he went to his math teacher, he said to him, I want to get an A in maths. And they said, you, from the beginning of his year 11, he came out with 6 A's. 6 A's, 1 B, 1 C, and 1 D. What am I saying? He succeeded, but there were scars. He went to uni. What were the consequences then? He used to daydream. He used to like stay like that. And he would just think, you look at him and it's like he's miles away. Within the role I work now, I know some of the things he was going through. He used to daydream. He used to, think like, and you're trying to get him to do things and you have to say it several times. But it's not defined us because we've come through. Why am I here? I am here to say it didn't define him. He came through, but there are some that he defined. There are some that from there, they ended up in the streets. There are some that ended up in groups that they shouldn't go, and they got into the legal system. And the next thing, conviction. The next thing, jailed. The next thing, it goes into the statistics. These people don't do well. They don't succeed. Fast forward. My little boy, we had another experience. My little boy, not seeing the board in the class. And it's a private school. You see, I've got a word of experience. I've gone through private school, local authority school, council estate school, okay? Private school, we put him in that private school because he was put in a school that we looked at and we thought, oh, the grade was a bit low. Let's not put him there. And then, few months down the line, 1 year is done, second year, came back. I'll pick him up in there and he would say, Mommy, the teacher is saying I need to go and see an optician. I said, what's that? Oh, I've seen the teacher every day when I came here. And then finally, I took my child to the optician. And my child could barely read as far as, could barely see. He could read, but the things on the board, he couldn't see. But every school has a policy. How do you treat children? We have Senko. There's a policy about managing children when they don't see, when they don't hear. The teacher will speak to the parents. I went back to the school and I said, look. I said, oh, she might have forgotten. And I just swept away. The next thing, I saw my son coming back with marks on his body. What happened? Oh, the classroom assistant was holding him because he wasn't listening. Because he wasn't listening. What happened? Where he was running off and he had this claws of mark on his body. And when I went through it, he wasn't listening. But he wasn't listening because he's experienced so much. And he was playing up. I quickly moved him from that school to a local authority school. Fantastic time, did very well. Had one experience of coming back in year 2. Mommy, there's this teacher that plays football with us, does our PE, doesn't like me. What's going on? I said, oh, let's leave it. I spoke to a classroom teacher. Oh, let's leave it. It's okay. And then it carried on. My son, I said, don't worry. Your class teacher is great. Your teachers are supportive. You come here to get education. Let's leave it. And then he left it. He left it until in his year 6. And then I've had times when I'll get this teacher come and say to me, I've banned him from football for the next couple of weeks. What did he do? Well, because he wasn't listening. But my son has already said to me, in year 2, this teacher doesn't like me. And what I would never say to my child is, I don't want to use the word racism. No, because I don't believe in it. The only thing I believe in, but it's real. The only thing I believe in is that some people chose to do what's wrong, knowing that it's wrong, adamant that it's wrong, but just decided not to shift. And I suppose, what do they want to gain? Maybe the day they leave this planet, it will be inscribed somewhere that they've only managed to make some people very miserable, uncomfortable, might have ruined some people's life, might have hurt parents, might have made parents to lose their job. And that's an inscription. Perhaps that's what they want to achieve. And that's the way I summarize it. Because in the midst of it are so many other people that are out there doing what's right. Somebody said, when you peel the layer of your skin, everybody's got red blood cells. Nobody's got green blood cells, purple blood cells. We're all the same. And then going back to my son, finally in year 6, few months before he finished, it happened again and again and again. And in the playground, I came to pick him up at the end of school, and he said to me, well, I think my teacher wants to speak to you. What did you do? Well, that PE teacher did it again, and I said to him, why don't you like me? What did I do? Tell me, because if it's something I can change, I am prepared to change. But if it's something I can't change, you're gonna have to live with it. That was what I did. Why did you say? He said, Mommy, I had to say it. I can't do anything about it. And then I had to go through, I said, please, my son, you'll be asked to go to the head teacher. Under no circumstance should you tell the head teacher that you think that the man was being racist to you. Because if you dare say that, the story will finish. Your case will be squashed that day, because he never said any racist word. And he said, Mommy, I said, no, please don't. Just say what you experienced. Don't use any words. And of course, he went to the head teacher. He just said his experiences and what made him feel that this person doesn't like him. And then the head teacher now said to him, to his face, do you think that this teacher doesn't like you because of the color of your skin, because of your race? My son said, I don't think so. Why should he do that? And immediately the head teacher said, well, I am going to investigate it. I'm going to investigate it. Leave it with me. So my son got this case investigated because he didn't use the taboo word. It needs to be investigated. Why don't you? The investigation didn't come to anything. But at the end of the day, he finished well in that school, he finished strong. I just want to summarize. I want to say, where are parents sitting? Every parent that have children. And what are you passing to your children? Where are the children sitting on this? And where are the professionals sitting? The ones that will watch people gang up about someone because they don't like someone, accuse the person, the ones that will agree to write statements. And these people end up going through horrendous stress, not being able to be there for their children, not being able to support their children, and end up losing their children into the streets, end up losing children into mental health. Some of the colleagues end up having a mental health breakdown, some losing jobs, becoming poor, losing homes. Where are we all sitting? For parents who go through it, we try to be strong. Because you've got to be strong. You've got to pull from somewhere. What do you pull from? You pull from within. What do you have? You have your identity. And then the identity, where we come from, we have a very strong identity of belonging, of who we are. So when we go out, you pull from your identity, you pull from your faith, and you pull from your inner resilience to keep going, hoping that one day someone will dare to say, this is not right. This is not right. Thank you very much.
Anulika, thank you so much. Thank you for staying afloat whilst you shared profound things with us. We praise God for your resilience and the grace that has enabled you and your family to get to the other side. And we're sorry for the scars. I pray that they will become fruitful
Testimonies.
to a testimony, and also to help us see what needs to change. And those of us who don't have those struggles need to understand the privilege that we have and the power that we have. Mariana Williamson, who was quoted by Nelson Mandela in his inaugural speech, talks about us not understanding, being afraid not of our weakness, but being afraid of our strength, afraid to show it and to use it. And so I think recognizing the power within and then seeing how we can use that to help level the playing field and enable and to stop these experiences, especially for our children, your children. I'm sure that lots of good things are going to come out of these sessions. Thank you. We go back to gallery view, if each of you want to choose that, and we'll be happy to take any questions you have of Anulika. Warren, if you could look in the chat and see if there are any questions or comments.
There are lots of positive comments and thank yous and saying it's very powerful. I can't see any questions as yet, but if anyone wants to ask a question, either wave a hand or from the reactions, put a hand up and we'll take a question. I know one of the things, having been a teacher in schools, that I think I very strongly recognize a lot of things you were saying, Anulika, in terms of prejudices of some people in the way they actually responded to some of the black students in the schools I worked in. And sometimes I think it was probably unconscious, but it was coming over. But I think in many cases, yeah, the prejudice and the reaction of staff as well as other students to many of the black students is one of the issues and one of the problems that we need to understand and try to move beyond. I mean, do you have any suggestions of how either staff or students or other parents could actually approach that and maybe help with some of the issues?
I suppose what I would say is starting early. What messages are we sending to our children? Or if I think about parents, what messages are we sending to our children when we see people who don't look like us and our body language changes? When we say things and when finish saying it, we say something like, well, I'm not being racist, but what are we saying to our children? we're inadvertently telling our children that it's okay, because children look at their parents, they look at other adults. So I think we need to begin to say things positive about one another. We need to be conscious of our body languages. We need to be very conscious of what I would describe as unconscious biases. It's unconscious. Some people do it because they kind of inherited it. It's the way things have been done over the years. Okay. And for teachers is actually standing up to say, no, that's not right. If you saw a disabled person being pulled apart because they are disabled, what will you do? I think that's the way I would describe it. How would you respond if you saw a disabled person being maltreated? There are no ramps for this child to come up. They need a ramp to pull their wheelchair up. You've not put some adaptation, and this child is struggling. How are we not going to scream? We also need to be conscious of the cultures that people come with. These cultures are very rich, and this is what defines them. And we need to come to the point of accepting those cultures. They're rich. A lot of them are very flamboyant. And the people that have those cultures enjoy them. Let's speak good of those cultures, not speak down of it. When the only thing we tell our children or the people is that, Black people in their countries in Africa is only, they run away from tigers and lions and they climb on the trees, but then they can still come over fully trained doctors working straight in the NHS, fully trained nurses, fully trained professionals. They didn't get it from the jungle. It's an unconscious bias for people to still describe a whole continent as a place that is just run down with children with flies all over their face. And can I say something? When I see those pictures and those videos on the television, I can only see it as an abuse. If you have a camera and you see a child with flies all over their face, and you can video it and boom it around the world to beg for money, is that how to describe children? Will you want your child seen that way? And if this is what we show people, then of course, children will grow up and parents grow up thinking, these people are just from a dungeon somewhere. Flies are all over their face. But in the same environment are absolutely built areas, professionals, teachers, footballers, and people that didn't go to school, but they love their life.
Yeah.
I took my son home 2018, went home to see my dad. And he was playing with the children, and he's never seen such joy. They play on the street, they run around. They don't care about cars and things and big. They love their life, they love their house, they love their mom, they love their dad. And can I say, give me a child who's happy and doesn't have a lot of money, a lot of affluence, 1 million times to giving me a child who lives in a big place with everything built up, but is frightened of walking out, frightened of going into a school, seriously affected by mental health problem, afraid of what is life. So the picture in our mind needs to change, and the pictures we pass across needs to change.
Okay. I'm aware that many children think that Africa is a country. They don't understand how many different countries are in Africa and how many different cultures, and they haven't seen pictures of cities and profession and, do you know what I mean, places that they would recognize. And I think that some of the the Band-Aid era, where we were shown extreme poverty and things, you know, that this in the way that we're being shown Yemen at the moment, but it's not the whole picture. So I remember thinking that Ethiopia must be a desert, and being, of course, shocked and surprised to find it a green and glorious land. And I think if we could only hear more about the good, the normal stuff about Africa, rather than poverty porn, it might help.
Yeah, it will help.
That wasn't a question. I've not modeled questions very well. Does anyone else want to respond to Anulika from what they've heard from her tonight?
Linda has a question, so if you'd like to unmute yourself, Linda, thanks.
Yes, yes, thank you. My question is, has it been more difficult for your sons than for your daughters? Was there a difference? Because I know a lot of times sons take the brunt of all the aggression.
I've talked about the sons, and I've not really talked much about, I've talked about the girls when they were being called poo, and they were being called chocolate. And they went to very affluent secondary school. Lots of challenges. And what I would say to you is, my daughter said to me, well, that she's going to university somewhere down south. And a lot of the girls from our school are going to a university very close to the Northwest. And she said, I'm really glad I'm not going there, because I don't want to get any piece of this place to somewhere else.
Mm.
So that just summarizes. But they're built to be strong. They're built to look like my daughter was saying to me, I know you don't want to go and bring a picture of weakness and being pessimistic, and because I know that's not you, mommy. But at least you need to say what's gone on, what we've gone through, and what's happening to so many people there. But I don't look at things from the negative side, and that's the way I brought them up. So if there's a problem, what do we do about it? What can we pull from within? What can we pull from around? So they've been able to go through it, and they've been able to succeed. And I believe God is still succeeding, and they will continue. Wherever there's an obstacle, there is a way, because we serve a way maker. The way maker will make a way.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Ahmed, I can see is wanting to ask a question.
Hi everyone, good evening. It's so moving, Anulika, hearing your testimony and how you found UK. It's not exactly a question, it's just I have so much empathy of what's been said and experiences. I grew up in the 60s, and what you just described, I saw it happened to me, was called the name with the P word and other things, and I saw West Indian children with me in this similar school, you know, being called all sorts with the letter N and the rest. So I am in some ways shocked on what's happened in the 60s, and we're talking about right now, you know, only 10 years back, and your kids had the similar experiences in school. So institutions and what institution teaches us in terms of education and how we've come to succumb to this kind of behavior, and you're a psychologist yourself and have worked with kids, and you can see, and you're a good Christian who, you know, and there's a lot of forgiving there. There's a lot of emotions, but yet you found the outlet to forgive and move on with your children together, to move on forward. Pretty much similar as a Muslim, you know. I suppose my Jewish friends, you know, we have a similar kind of strong faith-based understanding of treating people with respect and dignity, and should the racism that you didn't utter the word racism, you wanted to resist on that one, which is remarkable, having had the exposure of that, experiences of that, and you didn't want to use the word racism. Right now, today, a few hours ago in Wales, there's a big report by Jay Singh, is a judge. He comes up with the institutional racism in public services. It's fresh, you know, but the institutional racism has been earmarked 20 years ago in terms of how things are panning out. So it's not a question, but it's about the Black lives and how, and our friend Elif just said earlier in the beginning, to say Black Lives Matters, because there's a disproportionality in terms of the effects on Black people, because they're visibly Black, and the interaction that they have is bitter. It's, you know, it's bitter in the schoolyard, in the classroom, and the rest. It mustn't. We need to decolonize those ideas. I think a lot of people are putting that on agenda, decolonize the education system itself, people who teach, you know, the teachers that we have. I'm a grandfather now. I've seen my grandchildren going, and I would never ever, I never felt inferior to anyone. And I'm glad your children have taken that, although broad brush of things of racism, and yet they become stronger. It's made me a stronger person, and I can deal with the, you know, the outside world in much better way, because like you have a strong faith, and faith often guides us to say, treat people with respect. So that's my saying, and I think you are. I'm sure you're a teacher. You can advocate what you're saying over and over again. And I thank you very much for sharing your emotions, because they're all true. They're absolutely true.
Ali.
I
That's a
think
very important point. Do you want to comment on that, and Anulika? Otherwise, there is another question as well.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, you've got to forgive to move on, because not forgiving, you're going to be dragging a lot of load with you. But then it depends on whether you have the strength. Some people will forgive and end up caving in, because it doesn't stop it. Forgiving doesn't stop what's happening, because there will be some that will struggle to forgive and cave in. And when they cave in, the children also cave in as well. And you have generations of, we're looking for a way to improve the outcome for children. The statistics, we need to put it back right away to the get the children, get the parents right. Let's be there. Let's do what's right. What's right is what we need to do. What's right? What's right for humanity? Thank you.
Thank you. And last question from Tom.
Yeah, first of all, I've never met you before, but I just want to say thank you. So thank you from somebody who doesn't know you, but it's genuine, because I've been to Black services and different churches over the years. And I want to thank you and the fellow people in your churches and however they define, for bringing a sense of joy and celebration to Christian faith in the UK. Thank you for doing that, because sometimes we've lost our confidence, we've lost our way here in Christianity. So thank you being the missionaries, the Black missionaries to the Christian Church in Britain. And thank you for sharing your joy and celebration. So a big thanks on my behalf for that. I've learned a great deal from that. I can't always share the outward expressions of joy that you sometimes experience, because it doesn't come naturally to me. I admit that. You know, I've got my restraints as an Englishman, but I thank you for being part of that. So my question is, what can we in the church, in the more traditional churches, give back to you for all the joy and celebration and purpose and confidence that you're giving to us? Because I think there's something missing in that communication between the more traditional Anglicans and Methodists, which I've been to and still go to, and I bless them too. So I'm not criticizing them. What can we give back to you and your church and your faith?
What can you give back? I think it's just acceptance, accepting the richness of the diversity and the culture, and then having a forum where we come together once in a while to share what's happening across the board, what is happening here and what is happening in the traditional Anglican Church, Methodist Church, and trying to find a way to celebrate each other's differences.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anulika. Thank you for all the questions. Tom, I think that's a perfect link into our topic for next week, Which, Jane, do you want to say something to introduce next week?
Yes, so next week we'll be joined by Beatrice Smith. She's an amazing Black woman. Oh, I think all my friends are amazing, but there you go. She is a Black church leader in a predominantly white church, and has given a lot of thought to helping white people do the work. I know that otherwise I try and make my Black friends do the work for me, tell me, spoon feed me. And she has really good pushback on that, and advice and encouragement to do the reading, to learn my history, to dig back and question the partial histories that I've been told, and to expand that and come to a better understanding of our present situation. So I think she'll be a very interesting person to listen to and to share questions with, as she talks about the response of the faith communities.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Anulika. You've maintained the very high standard, if not even surpassed it, of our presenters and speakers in the seminar so far. It's been a moving and privileged evening to be with you and hearing you, and thank you for sharing that. And there are sort of indications here and through chat and everything that are now suggesting exactly the same. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Reg.
We look forward to continuing our journey together next week. And look, if you have time to be with us for more of our journey, maybe a conference that comes up towards the end of the year or something like that. And would also be very good, excuse me, I've mentioned last week that we're looking to develop this. It's not just 7 seminars, but if anyone's interested in either helping think through either a conference, another action we can take together as human beings, as people of faith, as representatives of faith communities, do let either Jane, Malika, or me know. We want to try and keep this going and make something special of this and effect some positive change. So thank you all. If you want to unmute yourselves and say anything,
thank
fine.
you. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
having me. I do appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
God bless.
Night, night.
God bless.
Bye.
Salam alaikum.
God bless.
Alaikum
Salam
salam.
alaikum.
Like an answer to your question, yes, I did send it to him. So I had one
Bye,
other.
Grantley. Bye, Kestra.
Oh, can't hear him, Malika. There you go. So,
Hi, Malika.
I did send
Hi,
it. To,
you okay?
yeah, I did
Yeah,
send it.
he said, I mean, he's the type of person that you can get a bit ignorant anyway. But
Right.
he sort of said he didn't. He's a comedian, and when he spoke to me earlier on, he said that he was going to send the advert to lots of his friends in the comedy world. Anyway,